Hey guys, Chelsea here. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about basically every SMG in Normandy. I'm going to rank them from worst to best, looking at all of the SMGs in Normandy. Now I'm not going to be taking a look at the gold order, so that means weapons like the Schmeiser, the Hyde. That's about it really. The Irma I believe is also in Normandy. The Irma EMP 44. Also, I'm not also going to be looking at any of the gold orders. These are going to be the base weapons, the base SMGs in the tech tree. Now, I am, however, going to include the MP43-1 because, come on, that is a really good... It's a really good thing. And also, it's kind of similar to a SMG. It fills similar roles, so that's why I'm going to basically be ranking these on basically the worst one and then go all the way down to the best one. And really just looking at them mostly from a, level 1 perspective, 1-star perspective, so unupgraded. And yeah, some of these are much better when they get upgraded, but some of these are much worse. Anyways, let's start with the worst and keep going on. Coming in for the worst SMG, it has to be the M3 Grease Gun, which is the base unlock SMG for the Americans. Now, why the M3? Well, it's just slow. It's slow firing. It's got a good replacement at level 9, which is basically super grade. And even when you compare it to the Sten, the Lancaster, and both the Thompson variants, it's just rubbish. It's a terrible SMG, and yeah, really bad. It doesn't do too much damage. It's not a good SMG at all. Everything's better than this. I think even the Pearson device is better than this. Anyways, let's move on to number 13. Coming in for number 13 is the FNAB. Now, I've already made a video on the FNAB, if you can check in the top right. I'll probably link it there. Now, the FNAB, I know people love this thing, but come on, it's not the best. It came here by default. It's just better. It's better than the M3, but it's not as good. Now, I know people say, oh, it's much better when you upgrade it, but I'm judging this on the non-upgraded stuff for all of these. And the FNAB just really falls down flat against compared to everything else. Let's move on to number 12, because there's not really much to say about the FNAB, which hasn't been said already. Coming in for number 12 has to be the M3A1 Grease Gun. Now, this is the A1, which is unlocked at level 9. Now, what I really don't like about the M3A1 is it doesn't have the fire rate again. It has better fire rate than the M3, don't get me wrong. It is better than the M3, but that's not hard. It's the only reason I put it above the FNAB is the fire rate is actually kind of usable. Like, it's similar fire rate to the FNAB, but I don't know. Yeah, the problem with this is that you're stuck with it for the longest time. Like the FNAB you can throw away. This thing is stuck with it for the long time until you get to the Sten. God, the Sten is a godsend compared to this thing. Anyways, it's to number 12. It's pretty bad, very bad weapon, but it's just better than the Grease Gun. Of course, it's better than the M3 Grease Gun, and I think it's slightly better than the FNAB. Anyways, let's move on to the next weapon. For the next SMG, I'm gonna have to go with the Beretta M1918. Now, I really like this gun. Okay, I'm gonna say this: the jump between the Grease Gun and the FNAB and the M1918 is actually quite high. I'd generally say this is a 6 out of 10 weapon, whereas the others are probably around a 3 out of 10 weapons. This is a really solid weapon. It's really good for close range, and you can actually kill people at long range with this thing. The only thing I can say is the magazine is appalling. It's got a really bad magazine. It's got a very quick rate of fire as well. Like, with every other quick rate of fire weapons, they have mostly good magazines. I think the only exception being the really early Soviet SMGs, which have, I think, like 35 stick round magazines, and maybe the PPK, which has the 25. The PPK is pseudo premium anyway, so yeah, not really the best, but hey, it's fine, I guess. Comes in here. Let's move on to the next weapon. Coming in at number 10 is the MP34. Now, the MP34 comes here really by default because it's not a bad weapon, don't get me wrong, but it's just that it's just a fine weapon, and there's just much better alternatives, really. Like, it's just fine. Really good option until you get the MP40, basically. As soon as you get the MP40, you probably should get rid of this thing. Not really much to say about it, just fine. Anyway, let's move on to number 9. Coming in at number 9 is the MP40. Now, I just said that there was really nothing to say about it until you get the MP40. This thing, the MP40 again, it's a fine weapon, but it's just lacking in my opinion compared to the other weapons that come a lot later. Like, some of them are really, really good weapons. The MP40 though, it's fine. Like, guess you could say it's fine. Really, you know, middle of the pack weapon, but yeah, it's a middle of the pack Axis SMG, so it's not the best. But again, it's an iconic weapon though, so but you get it on every campaign, so it gets a bit boring unlocking it for the 50th time. Anyways, let's move on to the next SMG. Coming in at number 8 is the ZK383. Now, the 383 is actually not too bad. It's actually a pretty solid SMG, well, SMG LMG, we said again LMG, which fires pistol cartridges. However, it's still pretty decent, really unique weapon, you don't see it much, so yeah, props on the devs for adding it. Pretty good check SMG LMG. Not the best weapon in the game, gets overshadowed in my opinion because it's stuck in between two better weapons, but hey, it's fine, middle of the road, really. Let's move on to number 7. Coming in at number 7, it is the Sten gun. Now, the Sten, I know, everyone says, oh, the Sten's bad. It isn't. It's really good. And compared to the grease guns that you have to slog through in order to get to this thing, it is a godsend. Seriously, it is generally a godsend when you get the Stens. Like, the grease guns are so goddamn awful that it's just, I don't even know how to say it. It's just a godsend getting these things. You know, actually having an SMG that works over whatever the hell the grease guns are. Like, it's ironic actually. The grease guns, you know, they are so iconic weapons. You know, they were used for the Gulf War. Yet in Enlisted, they are piles of arse. The Sten, however, most people just say, oh, you know, just say for the Lancaster, but generally, it can hold its own, I think. It can hold its own, and yeah, it has a few issues at the sights, but hey, it's a fun SMG to use. Anyways, let's move on to number 6. Coming in at number 6 is the Lancaster, which is essentially just what happens when you take the Sten and improve it in every single way. The Lancaster is basically an improved version of the Sten. It's got better damage, better range, better recoil, better sights, better everything really. It's pretty much just a complete upgrade on the Sten. The only reason it's just missing the top 5 is that I think there's just better weapons in my opinion than the Lancaster. It's a good weapon, and also the Lancaster gets really overshadowed really quickly by another pair of weapons, which of course you'll see later. Anyways, let's move on to number 5. Coming in number 5, it is the MP35-1. Now, the MP35-1 is actually a very, very good SMG. Now, in my opinion, this is the Axis' best SMG, again, until you get the Beretta, but I think this thing actually handles well the Beretta. Like, I think the 5 till 3, you can actually make an argument for any of them being in this slot. Like, you can make an argument for the MP35 being the best, for being at number 1. This thing is really good. Like, it's generally just a really good SMG. It can be used at long ranges, it can be used at mid ranges, short ranges. I generally just love this thing, it's so good. The only real downside to the MP35 in my opinion is it's unlocked really late. Like, it's just unlocked around the time you get the M1918. I reckon you just have more time to use this thing, and you can have more fun with this thing. Maybe people can stop saying the Axis suffer because you can actually get this beast really early. Yeah, I think yeah, that's the only downside for it, is high cost. Anyways, let's move on to number 4. Coming in at number 4 is the M1 Thompson. Now this is the M1 version, which is unlocked at level 32. Not the M1A1, that's a little bit later. Now the M1 Thompson isn't a bad weapon. Like, people say, oh, it's the worst, but it's really not. It's a really good Thompson. It's a Thompson for a start. I prefer the sights to this thing. I prefer the look of the M1 over the M1A1. But even I have to admit, the M1A1 is a better weapon in my opinion. It's a much better Thompson. It's a better SMG. But yeah, the M1 Thompson was pretty much a guaranteed top 5 on the perimeter. It's Thompson. Yes, strong. You know, it's strong. Pretty much 2 3-shot kills. It's really good at mid-range as well. It's a Thompson. The only thing I don't like is the fire rate is a bit insane at times, but yeah, it's not, which is why it's a bit hindered here. But again, top 5, really good SMG. It's one of the best SMGs in the game in my opinion, and it's just a fun weapon to use. Anyways, let's move on to number 3. Coming in at number 3 is the Beretta M38, the Model 38. Now, the Beretta is really good. 40 round magazine. It has a good rate of fire. It's basically everything the FNAB wishes it to be. Literally, this thing is good at mid-range, it's good at close range, it's good at long range. I've sniped Joey with this thing, and you know that's saying something. That's something to be. That's an achievement in itself. Like killing one of the best players in the game at long range with this thing is an achievement in itself. But yeah, it's a good SMG. Really, I mean, when this was the big top dog SMG, you know, you can make an argument for top 2, obviously, but I just had to put it outside the top 2 because it's just the other 2, the Allies version, and of course what's left for the Axis. Because it's only, if you've been keeping track, you'll know what's left. Anyways, that being said, it's a great SMG, really good. One of the best SMGs of the game. Just a fantastic SMG. All in real life as well. The Model 38 was so good. The Germans actually replaced the MP40 with it. It was so good. Anyways, let's go on to number 2. For number 2, it's the only weapon here that isn't actually an SMG. It's the MP43-1. Now, it's basically the STG, so I'm just going to call it the STG. Now, the STG, it's very good. It's an assault rifle, for God's sake. You can't go wrong with it. It's in a league of its own most of the time. Now, the only reason that I'm putting it at number 2 and not in number 1 is I think that the number 1 is just better in my opinion. And the thing is still really good. It's great at mid-range. It's destructive at long range. You'll kill anyone at long range. You'll kill anyone at mid-range. You'll kill anyone at short range. It's one of my weapons of choice. I love it. I'm pretty sure most people who've used it love it. It's basically, you know, you're playing, you know, everyone's said it already if they've used it. You're not playing Enlisted, you're playing Call of Duty when you're using this thing. It is insane. Just great weapon. Arguably one of the best in the game. But I'm going to have to say it's not the best Normandy SMG in the game. Or well, I class it as an SMG, but it's really an assault rifle. But it's not the best in my opinion. And that honour, of course, is the number 1. Should there be anyone surprised? I've said this is the best weapon in Normandy, so there was no surprise here. It's the M1A1 Thompson. I've loved this thing since the minute I got it, and oh my god, I've been abusing people with this. I've caused people to actively hate this weapon because of how I use it. I've literally caused people to hate people who use this weapon because I'm so good with it. It is a fantastic weapon. Just so good. Just good rate of fire, good magazine, great at pretty much most ranges. I think the only thing it really lacks is long range, but close range, mid range is really good. The only real downside, of course, is the sights, but again, that's more of a nitpick. Even then, like, I really do love this weapon. It's a fantastic weapon, and there's not really much to say. I love this thing. If you've used it, you can understand why it's so good. And if you've been up against it, you know, you probably understand why it's so good and why it's a high level unlock. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this video here. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Leave your thoughts in the comments, what you think is the best SMG, what you think is the worst SMG, or just, you know, how you're going to rank them. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.